Welcome to Tuesday, September 9th, 2025. Your DayWeather podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. As we showed you yesterday, we're in a bit of an omega block pattern, and that's going to mean we're stuck in a situation where the weather really won't change much overall for the rest of this week and a good part of next week. Low pressure, more often than not, will be in Western Canada, western areas of the United States. And what this will do is give us mild to warm temperatures. There's nothing cold coming. There's nothing really hot coming. We're just going to have overall some pretty comfortable weather for most of you. Showers and thunderstorms with Pacific moisture and a little bit of subtropical moisture around. And as we mentioned yesterday, we have some seasonal long-range forecast updates to pass along. With a lot of the real thick Canadian smoke pushed out, starting to see the sky again, which means some nice sky and photos for you from the clouds to the sunrises to the sunsets all across the area. Nice to see the visibility get better, although the visibility for some of you, especially in western Wyoming and parts of the Pacific Northwest, still isn't very good. But we're able to see the sky again and get a long view of that horizon to see cloud formations and virga and all of those things like we see there. Then, of course, where it's smoky in western Wyoming, smoky sunset over the Hoback Range in western Wyoming. And then some of that moisture that's trapped underneath this pattern, you can see from a photo this weekend in Utah. The satellite imagery this morning is a little hard if you look at just the infrared here, but you can see we've got some areas of patchy clouds right here. Then we see a swirl right here. If we look at the water vapor, boy, you can see things very well. We've got a deep low here off the Aleutians. We've got another area of low pressure that's right here in the Pacific Northwest. And when we look at the 500 millibar chart, you can see that deep storm up here, the low just off the Pacific coast. And as we go forward in time, here's your omega pattern right here. So the Greek letter omega shows up in jet stream patterns like this. And when they do that, the low pressure here maintains the high maintains this low here. So it's a self-propagating feature, so to speak, and they take a while to break down. The good news is that this will keep cool, unsettled weather in British Columbia, the Pacific Northwest, and parts of the Intermountain West, hopefully to help with the fire situation. If you look at the precipitation forecast between now and Sunday, this is between now and Sunday, you can see that the fire areas have got some chances for some shower activity, and you're going to see reflected in that a lot of clouds and temperatures that'll be a little bit cooler. We're still seeing this area right here in southwest Colorado, northwest New Mexico, where a little bit of subtropical moisture combined with the low pressure here is going to feed some moisture into here. So hopefully in the days ahead, some needed rain will fall in this area here. Look at Montana, the Dakotas here, up into southern Saskatchewan. You're going to see some pretty good rainfall amounts with this persistent area of low pressure. Showers and scattered thunderstorms will be noted elsewhere. As we go out further, all the way into the middle of next week, so by next Wednesday, the omega block pattern is starting to break down a little bit, but we still see this area of low pressure still hanging around. So if we were to look at next week's weather from Wednesday through Friday, we see that the omega is beginning to weaken. By Friday, we start to see this high pressure ridge. Now, I'll tell you, past Friday, past the 19th, we've got a big question mark on how this will evolve. But once the omega block begins to break down, we're seeing signs of a high pressure ridge wanting to build here. But the amplitude, the extent, and the strength of it, we just have to wait and see. This area of low pressure is likely to want to slip down into the western and central United States by the weekend after this one. And that could bring about and instigate a bit of a change. But the omega pattern, the blocking pattern, is with us here for a solid week or so. And if you look at the forecast for precipitation Monday through Friday of next week, you can see this area stays wet up here. It just stays persistently moist with occasional showers and thunderstorms. It's pretty moist for September in this part of the country here, but they could certainly use it. And that should help out with the fire situation. Once we go beyond the time frame of mid to late next week, that's when things will start to change after that 19th or 20th of September. Temperatures over the next 5 days. This is from this upcoming weekend into next week. So there's a persistence of a little bit of coolness, but not cold for sure. And warmer than average temperatures will be found elsewhere across the central United States into central Canada, where the high pressure is in the Omega block. So nice weather, really. Occasional showers and thunderstorms. Temperatures are going to be mild. Here's your seasonal update. First of all, let's look at sea surface temperature anomalies. We have addressed the talk that a La Nina is coming on for the winter. The new European model, if we look at the 3-month period of December through February, is showing that the cumulative sea surface temperature anomalies do show some coolness along the equator, but this is by no means a robust La Nina. It's really not a La Nina. You can see that it's not continuous. The anomalies are there, but we have patches of warm in between. More importantly, as we talked about in our winter forecast, are these warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies continuing to show in the North Pacific. The Canadian model, rather, I'm showing you the Canadian model here. The European model is a little bit cooler with the subtropics over that 3-month period, but most of this coolness is in December. And again, this is far from a robust or even a well-established La Nina. Here's the warmth in the North Pacific. This area right here in both models is persistent, and the anomaly is pretty strong. So this is a strong signal, much more than the tropics here. So this will be the dominant factor up here. And if we look at the 500 millibar mean of that 3-month period, the European model is again showing the ridging wanting to be out in the Pacific here, and the trough coming into North America like this. The Canadian model signal is much more robust, but it's basically the same, showing the strength of the anomaly in the same location in both models. This is really not very different from what we showed you in the winter forecast. The Canadian's just a lot colder, and the high pressure ridge, if it does sit up there, does open the gates to Canada and parts of the northern U.S. to be cold. Whether it will be a persistent cold going on weeks and weeks, probably not, because in neutral situations in the Pacific, you tend to have a lot of variability, and I think that'll certainly be the case. One interesting thing to point out with the new European seasonal model is it's wetter, and it's showing the 3-month period right here a lot wetter in the Pacific Northwest than the other models are showing. But I want to kind of break out this area right here. This is something that was showing up in the winter forecast that's still there. Where you see the green shading, it's above average precipitation. The white is average. The brown is a bit below average. So it's still showing the tendency for the Midwest, the Great Lakes, the Northern Plains, parts of the Rockies, and in the European model at least, the Pacific Northwest to be wet. The Canadian model is much drier in the Pacific Northwest, but it's also showing this same area right here. So there's nothing to rock the boat in terms of the seasonal forecast with the new data. Temperatures on the Canadian are essentially the same. For the 3-month period, if we were to kind of draw where the white meets the orange, there you can see that there's going to be the coldest, at least the way the Canadian sees the world evolving, will be Canada, the northern tier of the U.S. But you got to remember, this is averaging things out over 90 days. And where you're along this boundary here is where you're going to have the most variability. So that's why systems are going to be wanting to transit through this part of the country here, with the coldest air coming in on the backside of them here. The European model, as we tell you all the time, has an extremely warm bias. And so the European model doesn't really have it cold anywhere, except in Northwest Canada, where it's just showing white. But you can't use the European for temperatures. It's just awful. One thing to point out, though, the European is showing a really cold January. Now, you might not say, well, that doesn't look cold, but if you include the bias, yeah, it is. And that's one thing that shows up when we look at January also on the Canadian model. The European model, just to remind you why I just poo-pooed it and didn't pay any attention to its temperature forecast, if you go back from May 1st and look at the European model for the 3-month period of June, July, and August, it was predicting a very hot summer in the nation's midsection and other parts of the United States, and this is what reality was. So the prediction and reality, especially here, now you could say, well, it might have been right in a few spots, but if you look at the square miles put together over a large scale, and you can see that there's just a warm bias. It missed California's coolness. It missed the coolness down in the Texas and other areas. So we're still not there yet in terms of seasonal models. Even some of the best models have trouble. But the signals there are the same for the winter forecast out in the Pacific, which is really what matters the most. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.